Are you willing to accept Christ's invitation to know Him more intimately, love Him more intensely, and follow Him more closely, and then go out into the world and live His good news? If you say yes, then you could be the 13th apostle. Join Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey, the odd couple of Catholic radio, as they ride the radio waves 2 by 2 to share the goodness, beauty, and truth of Jesus Christ and His church. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 13th apostle.
There's so much pressure on parents to get children their smartphones, but is that a wise decision? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, the beautiful, and true, the Catholic faith and Catholic Church of Jesus Christ. This is Tom Caffrey with my co-host Dan Duddy. Hey, Danny.
Hey, Tommy. How you doing?
All right.
Good.
Well, I'll say on the air, condolences to you for the loss of your sister.
Thank you. Yeah, lost my sister Kathleen on Sunday afternoon, a couple of days ago from the date of this recording. Somewhat surprising, but then again not. She was, sick, but something, that she fell ill to something that wouldn't be considered fatal to another healthy person. But yeah, she's a twin to my only brother, and she's one of 3 girls. 4 of us remain now.
Twin. All right.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Tough stuff, always.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll say a prayer for Kathleen and family, her husband Kevin.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So you sent me an article about the technology and children, particularly smartphones and social media and whatnot, but mainly smartphones. The title is Unplugged Childhood. No, I'm sorry. That's the title of the article. And the article is Unplugged Childhood, Heights Battle Cry Against Early Smartphone Use. And that's because of the recent publication of the book, The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And that's by, the author is Professor Jonathan Haidt. Haid as in David, T as in Thomas. Yeah, I'm glad you sent this. I told you that I know of him. I have one of his books, which I believe he co-wrote, The Coddling of the American Mind. And so you see a little bit of a theme there. And I read about this book, read about his work that led to the book. I've seen him interviewed. And it's, it's like so many things that you and I talk about, especially when it involves children. And it's not good. It's not good. The subtitle of this article in the National Catholic Register by Ashley McGuire, it says, we are overprotecting our children in the real world while underprotecting them online. And, when I read this, gosh, a whole bunch of things immediately came to mind. And the first thing was, go way back with the advent of, the invention of the television and whatnot, and as things got more sophisticated and Sesame Street came on and so on and so forth, the TV became the babysitter and the playmate for many children, including yours truly. I mean, not really a babysitter. It was, once I saw, whether it was Rin Tin Tin or the Lone Ranger, I loved them. But I just thought about that especially with children's programming, and the big one was, and probably still is, Sesame Street. Then I remember seeing, the first time I saw DVD players in the back seat of cars. So the back of the headrest of the front seats. you know. And I remember saying, as soon as I saw them, I said, gosh, there goes the conversation. It's like a barrier between the front seat and the back seat. Now, I have to be fair to people because, you know, I only have 2 children. And I think of my parents would have 8 children. And I'm sure if they could put up a lead barrier between, you know, their front seat in the car and every seat behind them,
yeah,
they would have. But I just remember how many, whenever we would go, many times not a short route, but you know, where we lived, where I still live, but we usually didn't have many short drives, even to school and whatnot. And so, but we would play audiobooks. We'd put the cassette tape in, and it'd be an audiobook. And especially when, let's say, Harry Potter started coming out on audiobooks, then the children were engaged in that, and then we would be a part of it, and then we'd have conversation about it and whatnot. So anyway, that's just 2 things that I thought about, and then when I read what he wrote, Jonathan Haidt wrote, that tablets are typically given out when children turn 2. It's shocking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're bringing back memories of the station wagon that we had, the 5 of us growing up with my mom and dad driving. And we had that back seat, you know, that third seat in the back, and it faced out the rear window. Yeah. And we used to get stuck back there, and all we could see were the backs of the signs and everything, and that awkward moment at red lights when the car behind us would pull up close to the bumper, and we'd be staring right at the man in the back, you know. And it took a while for me. It took a while for me at age 17 to not drive backwards when I got my license. You know, I thought that's how you're supposed to drive. But you know, our kids growing up, and we have an age difference of 16 years from the oldest to the youngest. And growing up, they were surfers on the beach, and then they became lifeguards on the beach, and the beach was everything to them. They wound up getting future job positions through those connections. We had no TV. We turned the TV off in June on the last day of school because we weren't watching it. And then it got to the point where we never turned it back on. And Michael came home one day and you know, getting of age, getting into puberty, and conversations at the table were changing more to being Yankee fans or Mets fans, whatever. And he not knowing, you know, who won last night and things like that. And coming home and said, "Hey, Dad, are we Amish?" Because, you know, he says his TV's not on, you know. And then moving onward into the middle of that age pack, that difference, I would say, here comes Gracie, who's 6 years younger than Mike, I guess. And all of a sudden now she's, Dad, I have no friends. Everyone went to the movies last night, and they all have cell phones. And I'm not in group chats. I have no ability to even find out what's going on. And she was bawling. So that's pressure. That's parental pressure. But I think where our families are going, and I have them right under my own nose, I have grandchildren, and one child in particular, it's really about sheer babysitting laziness to a large degree. And it's showing in the personality of this particular one. Whereas at a family gathering at Thanksgiving, all of the cousins, my grandchildren, sit around the table and their friends, and there's a great deal of unbelievable interaction, and you can really see them grow in the interactions. And you know how it goes. You can see personalities. You can see the alpha male. You can see who's studying the group and who's going to get a verbal cheap shot in later, and it's a lot of fun. But this one guy is just glued to his iPad watching cartoons because that's the way he lives. And it's sad to see, but I'm going to give you the mic in 1 second. I sent this all around, this article, to all of my children who are raising my children's children.
Beautiful.
And I was so pleased that my one son-in-law, who's married to Aileen, my oldest, down in South Carolina, immediately sent me a picture back of that very book on his kitchen table. I was like,
nice.
Yes, yeah, right? So it's pretty cool. But anyway, there's a lot to be said, but go ahead. You're up, and let's keep this rolling.
I'm proud of him.
Yeah.
That's and your daughter. I mean, for doing that, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's taking control. Well, taking back control.
Yeah.
You know, because
persevering, Tom. Really
persevering in the face of society, and again, what your children and grandchildren will face. I put off the smartphone with my children for quite a while, and I was at doing some work at one of my client companies several years ago, well, quite a number of years ago now, and this guy, got to know him. We would talk periodically, and so this came up, the smartphone. He was almost shocked that my children didn't have a smartphone yet, and I gave him reasons which were legitimate reasons, but he said that, and he's very technically savvy. He's a fair number of years older than me, but he's technically savvy, and he said, your children are going to be behind. They're going to fall behind if they don't have a smartphone and all their peers have a smartphone, because they're making the smartphones that can do this and that, and so that really made an impression upon me. I mean, it really had an impact, and I went out not long after that conversation, and I got them smartphones. Now they weren't very young. They were in their teens, but definitely they were behind in terms of where their peers were. Well, I mean, now my son is, Kevin is 33, I think, and he's in Lima, Peru, teaching, and he swore off on. Well, he did this a while ago, but he swore off on the smartphone. He got a basic phone. That had certain features like maybe GPS or whatnot, because you never know where he's going to end up. But no more of that stuff. And the two of them hardly did any social media and don't do any. So it was interesting how I was influenced by this guy who I knew somewhat but respected, and he seemed to make a compelling case. And now we've not full circle. I mean, they still, Maureen will use a smartphone. I have a smartphone. I use it a lot. I use it for business and whatnot. But I'm not on social media. I never have been. In fact, I'm locked out of Facebook, and I don't even know the reason I'm locked out of Facebook. I can't even get on Facebook. So.
Are you still locked out?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm in Facebook hell, and I'm never getting out. And I don't know why.
Congratulations! That's awesome.
I think I may have done something. Maybe it's something I wrote, or a blog post I wrote that was, that was, I don't know whether it was pro-life or whatever it was, and they said, no, you just broke our law, so you're done.
Facebook hell means eternal heaven on the right side, so good for you. Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, I wish I had done it intentionally.
Yeah. Blessed Carlo Acutis, who's now I going to be canonized as saint. We call him, he's the modern day saint. I think everyone knows Carlo, the teenage young man who fell ill at a young age. And he's known as the guardian of the internet. And it goes back to the virtue of moderation, one of our four cardinals, temperance. Mm-hmm. And, he says, the internet can be good. And we know it can be very good. But when it's in your right pocket, then it can be very tempting. And moderation can become an issue. And that's the problem. We're talking about moderation. And we're also talking about the fact what it's done to society, our youngsters growing up. You and I put a book together, and then we separated, and you finished yours. You inspire me, but I'm also jealous that you did. And I say that with a smile. But the original title of the book was Batman Never Had a Play Date. Remember?
Yes.
But yeah, so and we were talking about kids not going out there and really exploring, and finding out who they were just by the sheer exploration of self by way of others.
And parental control, the parents being like helicopter parents, always supervising everything.
Yeah, and now the parents are not letting the kids outside because of pedophilia and all the things that could happen on the streets, whereas all those things are rampant on cell phones. But Tom Sawyer did not have a cell phone. And if Tom Sawyer had a cell phone, Tom Sawyer wouldn't have been Tom Sawyer. He wouldn't be so interesting, right? And he wouldn't, right? He would not be someone that would cause intrigue to us, because adventure and cell phones, they just don't seem to go hand in hand. Plus, we wouldn't know Tom Sawyer today anyway because we can't put down our cell phones to read about him. So it's really about exploration and creation and finding out who we truly are.
Yeah, it's through experience.
Yeah, through experience, through human experience.
Not reading about it.
Yeah.
You and I talk about all the time. It's that about word. They know about this, but they don't know it because they haven't experienced it.
Yeah. And even if you're outside with a cell phone, you're inside. I see it everywhere, and I talk about it in every single one of my talks. Let me tell you a tragic story, but it's powerful. The story of Francis I make very, very raw and very graphic when I tell the story to these many, many, many students that God has put in front of me, and I have much gratitude for that. But Gracie, my daughter, under my own roof, amidst me telling all of her siblings while she slept, not knowing that we had lost Francis in a tragic car crash, that 2 police officers were at my house. I told all the others eye to eye. But a couple of them were texted to get home safely so I could tell them because they were out and about in their age. They were living in their own places. She woke up screaming because she was told by social networking that she had lost her brother.
Yeah.
That, you see the sickness in that? And I'm so thankful and inspired that when I tell a group of 400 seniors that, they roll their eyes and they shake their heads and they get it. They get it. That's the conflict of the humanity versus the superficiality. Well, tickle talk world. We get tickles from TikTok, nothing else.
Well, we're going to talk about TikTok in a moment. One of the things that Haidt writes about is the, and we just talked about the word experience. And he refers to them as "quote unquote" experience blockers. And he writes that these are experience blockers that suppress authentic human engagement that humans deeply need. But these programs that are experience blockers, they're designed to addict. And they change the chemistry, the brain chemistry. And the neurotransmitters, and such that they're designed. I mean, the adults are designing these to addict children. It's kind of like, in my mind, it just makes me think of the tobacco companies putting that nicotine or enhancing that nicotine. These are addicting. I'm not going to get on a tangent with that. My father, God rest his soul, he's dead because of cigarettes.
My sister too. We're
there
just
you go.
Lost. Yeah.
But he tried to quit many, many times, but he's addicted. And I do think that this is like parents stepping in and saying, "Hey, listen, we're going to take that cigarette out of your mouth. You're not going to have that cigarette anymore. We're going to do whatever we can." But not just to say you can't do that, but let me try to explain to you how a rich, full life can be lived, how you can do that, son or daughter. There's so much out there. You want to be able to tell stories about your life. If you read about stories, you see things on YouTube or TikTok, X now,
right?
You want to be able to have. I used to tell people that, especially when I was bartending my way through school, I'd say I'd like to be able to give a story, especially when I was bartending, to be able to share it with people, to have a story to tell every night that whenever it was my night to bartend, to tell a story of my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, witness is everything. The Gospels it's witness. It's why we love Christ, through personal witness. The essentiality that lives in our humanness is something that is going right past our children. And Haidt talks about adolescence as being the height of, no pun intended, the height of the time where they need to really begin to understand humanity, humanness. That's what happens, again, in my talks. I pound essentiality into these young people, but they're in high school. They're going out in 60 days, they're going to graduate, or in 2 weeks, they're going to graduate. Then they got a 60-day summer, and then they're either in college or they're out there. And it's their essentiality that they have to come to know about. They'll never know the consequences of their lives, the purpose-filled consequences of their lives, positive and negative, until they realize how essential they are. And that phone in the right hand, it's the devil's right hand. The devil doesn't want you to really understand, live with gratitude and with a fever of your very own creation. And it very much takes your essentiality and the sanctity of your essentiality away from your conscious. It's evil. It's diabolical when time ticks away and we don't get to where we need to get because of it.
Well, I mean, that essentiality, and certainly in this broadcast, in WQPH, Queen of Perpetual Help, the whole context is our essence, our essentiality is children of God, made in the image and likeness of God. So what, the parents, we cannot take the easy way out, and it's so tempting. I'm not condemning them. There are people, especially if they're single parents and maybe they're working 2 jobs, and picture your life when you were working the multiple jobs and you were single and you got children. It's so, if you can keep your children quiet, or they're not getting in your way, or there's whatever it is, that's very tempting. And so I'm not going to condemn people, but I am going to say, hey, listen, you're condemning your children to a difficult life, to misery, to unhappiness. The Haidt talks a lot about this not just in this book, and you and I've talked about it a lot too. And certainly we had an episode on this when the CDC, the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, came out with their study, the comprehensive study of adolescents. It was girls more than boys, and Haidt talks about that the suffering that they experience with social media. Their whole MO is communion, is relationships, but they can get pummeled online by their quote unquote friends. It's terrible, and so there's a suicide ideation, no mission or purpose in life. There's an emptiness there, and that's where parents have to jump in.
Yeah. And that's really interesting because that's a huge temptation and such a driving force. And he does a great job talking about that the males, the boys and men are more focused on what he calls agency strivings, while the girls and women are more focused on communion strivings. Whereas, the men want to have an effect on the world, so they'll post things to influence, to make an effect. Whereas the girls and the women have a desire, as he says, to connect and develop a sense of belonging. But it is addicting. And I think that if we could put this phrase out there that Ashley McGuire, the writer, kind of finishes up with, it's digital crack. It's crack. It's digital crack. And I think that when we look at the perils of crack addiction and drug addiction, and then the dopamine that is so powerfully affected by this addiction to our smartphones, she refers to it as digital crack. And I think that's powerful for our parents to hear.
Yeah, and you're not overstating it. I mean, the people say, well, Dan's exaggerating with the crack. No, I mean, the studies have been done, and more research is being done on the brain, and to say, okay, this is what this change in these impulses of dopamine have on the human brain. Read about it, ladies and gentlemen. That dopamine is significant,
yes.
And if you get this pleasure from something, well, darn it, you want that. You want that, especially if your regular life is not very pleasurable for whatever reason. Now you get this hit, and you're hooked.
Yeah. It's a quick hit, and I think 90% of our people out there are shaking their heads yes, and I would guess 90% have a little bit of that addiction themselves. So we got to fight the fight, and what are our kids going to see when this is the old days, when this is the ancient times, when they're my age? What will they have in their hand? What will they be distracted by then? Because I don't think it's going to get any better unless we fight the fight.
Well, maybe we'll come full circle, and the tablet in 100 years will be like those tablets that Moses had, and they're not so easy to carry around. So they'll just put them aside.
I don't know if you're an optimist or if you're just crazy.
Well,
can you imagine that?
They won't be using.
Can you imagine going to school with a stone tablet?
That would be. You should bring that in when you teach. Bring that in and say, "Here's my tablet. You guys should get to know this tablet."
Yeah, you should get to know. They're going to say, "Where's your charger?"
What are you going to do? Pull out your crucifix? Come on.
Yeah. Oh, there's a charger. Amen.
Oh,
good answer, guys.
Man.
You got this figured out.
Danny, all right.
Yeah.
We're this is the end. We're at the end, but this is it's so easy to close our eyes. When something's difficult, it's so easy. But we just have to persevere, as you said. I think you said that before we went on the air. You just got to persevere.
Yeah,
so,
well, we are eternal. We have to leave something strong behind because we're going to be watching it as within the body of the communion of saints, right, Tom? So,
well, I'm wondering what you're going to look like, when I see you in the next life. I'm just wondering. I wonder if I'm going to recognize you.
Hopefully, I'm over 6 feet tall. That would be cool. That would be heaven for me.
Well, how would I recognize you then?
Because I'll still have this face.
Same face?
Yeah, same face.
Oh.
I don't want to give up my face.
Well, you want to give up the
rest? If you had
you?
this face, you wouldn't want to give it up. I'm smiling. You're supposed
Bless
to be
me,
smiling.
Father, for I have sinned.
Laugh. that was a 0.5 second pause and it killed me. Come on, buddy, back me up.
Danny, you are special.
All right. You too.
What's coming up next here, buddy?
Stay tuned, folks, for The Angelus and Your Prayer Intentions with Peter and Jemmy.
The aforementioned WQPH Radio. All right, ladies and gentlemen, any support you give, even at the very least, listening and thinking about what we say, and then doing it, if you agree with us. If you don't, you can reach out to us. But I'm sure everybody agrees with us, especially you, Danny. I think they always agree with you.
You think so?
Yeah, but I think maybe we should do an episode on that. Just like all the ways that people will agree with you over the years that we've been doing this.
Oh, that'd be great. I'll just sit back and listen.
No, that's impossible. I can't even imagine that.
Oh, you should talk, man. Oh, no, you shouldn't talk. That's right.
See? All right, Danny. God bless you, brother.
All right, buddy. Yeah, God bless you too, Tommy. God bless you all.
Thank you for listening to The 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?